Intro: a life born in dust and frost. Imagine opening your eyes for the first time, not in a warm crib, but in a smoke-filled, freezing hut where straw is your bed, rats are your nightly visitors, and disease lurks in every shadow. There are no lullabies, no soft toys, only the sound of coughing, the cries of the hungry, and the rustling of wind against cracked wooden walls. You are not a child of destiny, of privilege, or of potential. You are a child of necessity. You were born not to thrive, but to serve. Welcome to life as a medieval peasant, a life where survival is not promised, and suffering is guaranteed. Part 1. The cold reality of birth, a welcome without mercy. From the very beginning, your life is under siege. As an infant, your chances of survival are horrifyingly slim. Studies of medieval demography estimate that 30 to 50% of all children die before the age of 5, mostly due to malnutrition, infection, or complications from childbirth. Your mother, likely weakened by years of backbreaking labor and repeated pregnancies, is at enormous risk of dying as well. There is no sterile environment, no trained midwife with proper tools. Birth happens in the same hut where livestock might sleep at night, and often ends in a burial before your name is ever spoken aloud. Even if you do survive, you enter a world where death is not just possible, it is expected. Infant coffins are commonplace, and grief is folded into daily life like it's just another chore. Every family buries children. Every village keeps its dead close, because death is never far behind. Part 2. Childhood without childhood, when innocence dies young. You might imagine a 6-year-old's life full of play, laughter, curiosity, but not here. By the time you can walk and talk, your hands are expected to carry weight. Your back to bend under the demands of labor. Boys follow their fathers into the fields. Girls learn how to fetch water, tend to livestock, and prepare meals, if there is food at all. No school, no toys, no bedtime stories unless they're oral tales handed down by firelight, usually warning you of wolves, witches, or punishment from God. Literacy? That's a gift for the nobility and clergy. For peasants, words are chains that bind others, not wings that let you fly. And when winter comes, the real terror begins. There is no central heating, no insulation. You survive by sleeping under piles of straw and praying the livestock's body heat leaks through the walls. Disease hits harder in the cold, and frostbite can claim fingers and toes. Children often don't survive the season. Part 3. A life of labor, endless toil from dust to dust. As a peasant, you don't work to grow rich. You work to avoid death. Your daily life revolves entirely around the fields, planting, weeding, harvesting, repeating the same tasks year after year, often with tools no more advanced than sticks and stones. You work from sunrise to sunset, sometimes longer in summer months. Your only reprieve might be the ringing of the church bell on holy days, a brief moment to rest before returning to labor. You don't get paid. You grow food, but much of it goes to your lord or landowner as rent or tax. The concept of your harvest is laughable. You keep what's left after your lord takes his share. The church takes its tithe, and the weather takes its toll. And when your body breaks down, when your hands blister, your joints swell, or your back gives out, you don't stop working. You can't stop. There are no pensions, no aid, no retirement. If you can't work, you starve. Or worse, you become a burden on your family. Part 4. The feast that never comes, hunger, famine, and failure. Medieval agriculture is an unforgiving master. One bad harvest, just one, can doom an entire village. Floods, droughts, locust disease, or even just a late frost can ruin months of work. Without grain, there's no bread. Without bread, there's no life. Peasants rely heavily on basic staples: barley, oats, rye, onions, and cabbages. Meat is rare, reserved for the upper classes or special occasions. If you're lucky, your village might slaughter a pig in the fall. But once that meat is gone, you're back to gruel. In famine years, people eat grass, bark rats, or clay. Cannibalism, while rare, was whispered of during extreme starvation. Mothers were known to skip meals for days so their children could eat. And sometimes, the children died anyway. Part 5. Disease, the invisible killer. The Black Death of the 14th century is infamous, But plagues and illnesses were constant companions to peasants even outside of pandemics. There was no concept of germ theory, no sanitation systems, and barely any clean water. Villages dumped waste into rivers, which they also drank from. Sewage, rot, and decay filled the air and ground. Diseases like dysentery, tuberculosis, leprosy, typhoid, and smallpox spread like wildfire. A simple cut could fester into a fatal infection. Most people had rotting teeth, chronic pain, or permanent injuries by their 20s. Midwives and physicians used leeches or herbs, but most cures did more harm than good. Once disease entered your village, you watched friends and family die with no hope of saving them. And sometimes you were blamed for it. Superstition ran deep. People accused neighbors of witchcraft, blamed Jewish communities, or punished sinful women and children in attempts to appease a wrathful God. Part 6. God above, Lord below, living under authority. Your body belonged to the land, but your soul, that belonged to the church. Religion wasn't just part of life. It was life. The church dictated when you worked, when you fasted, how you prayed, and how much of your harvest you donated. You were told that suffering was holy, that pain cleansed the soul. Your only hope for peace was heaven, and to get there, you had to obey. You were also at the mercy of your Lord, who owned the land you worked. He could raise your taxes, conscript you for war, force you into labor on his manor, or even strip your family of rights with a simple command. You were legally tied to his land, bound by law, unable to move freely. Disobedience meant fines, beatings, imprisonment, or worse. Part 7. A social prison. No climb, no escape. Today, we talk about mobility. Climbing the ladder, chasing dreams, building wealth. But in medieval times, if you were born a peasant, you died a peasant. Full stop. There were no universities, no apprenticeships, no chances at upward mobility unless you joined the church, which itself was highly exclusive, or performed some rare heroic act that caught a noble's eye. But even then, you were more likely to be used and uplifted. Running away was risky. You could be caught and returned, or branded, maimed, or killed. And cities weren't havens. They were cesspools of crime, disease, and squalor. Part 8. Women, the silenced workforce. If you were born a peasant girl, your life was doubly hard. You worked in the fields and inside the home. You cooked, cleaned, raised children, carried water, milked livestock, spun wool, and gathered firewood. And you did it all without recognition or rights. You could be married off at 12 or 13. You had no say in your husband. Domestic abuse was common, and there was no legal protection. A woman's role was to obey, endure, and reproduce, often until her body gave out in her 30s. Widows had slightly more freedom, but it usually came with starvation or isolation.